The starting point for any scrapbook page for me is faith. Faith that if I begin moving my photos around on the canvas, the story and the design will emerge. Watch me make Home in Winter and see where my faith took me on this day. See my starts and misstarts, see my movement forward and the final result. Along the way, learn about layout design and figure out what story you next want to record for all time. Hi, this is Debbie Hodge with GetItScrap.com, and I'm going to walk you through the making of this page, Home in Winter, and especially talk about finding a story for what started out as just some pretty pictures. I wanted a scrapbook, and so I went through pictures I'd recently taken when I'd visited my mom in upstate New York, and I loved this picture of the chickens and the cats in the door. Really wasn't sure what kind of story I could tell with it though, and I kept looking through the other pictures that I had from that time and decided to pull up some that showed basically the farm in winter or the home in winter. I knew I'd done one last year called Old Farm in Winter, so I didn't really want to use that same title. So the challenge was going to be to find a story, but I love these chicken photos and wanted to find some way to scrapbook them. I've decided that 3 is a really nice number to work with photos. Unless I'm telling sort of an event story that really needs more. If I'm doing a pretty page, a message page, a feeling page, 3 is a nice number for me. I know for a lot of people that would be 1, but I like to have the context. So I narrowed it down to this picture of the kittens with the chickens and the picture of the barbed wire with the fence post and this picture of my mom's house. I love that muddy driveway in it and the tracks that it shows because it's a dirt driveway, and that's really how it's always been ever since I was a child, and it's got a lot of great memories for me. I noticed that the photos all had different color casts, especially the photo of the house had a blue color cast. So I used Totally Rad Labs and I lightened up all the photos and added a warming filter multiple times to the house, only once to the fence post, just to get them all to the same warm sepia toned color. I also cropped the picture of the chickens and the kittens to 3.5 by 5, as I did with the fence post. I find that 3.5 by 5 is a really nice size to work with. If I don't work with that, I usually work with 4 by 6. I like to work with classic sizes that you would actually print on your printer, even though I'm a digital scrapbooker. Now I've dragged the photos over onto my canvas, and this process can apply just as much to a paper scrapbooker as a digital scrapbooker. So this is the point where I start moving things around on the canvas to decide how my composition will shape up. And something I do a lot of times is to immediately start aligning things in sort of a blocked arrangement, and sometimes I fill in those empty spots to create a whole block. Today I started out thinking about how I actually want to use a block. I want to use a rectangle as my canvas and put the photos on it. I call this composition on a block. And so I'm looking for a piece of pattern paper that I can put it on. The reason that I want to do this is whenever you reduce your choices, whenever you constrict things or constrain things, you have fewer choices to make, fewer decisions to make, and the process goes more easily. So I started looking at pattern papers. I have this new set by Lynn Marie called Annabelle, and I love these papers, and I really want to use this flower paper, but it's a bit of a challenge because I'm working on a winter page. However, the doilies on yellow have a snowflakey kind of look, and I think it could be good if I emphasize that paper and keep the floral print a little bit smaller or in the background so parts of it peek out in a layered arrangement. Now that I've got that mat or that block under my photos, I'm going to add some strokes. If you're a paper scrapbooker, this could be a narrow white mat or some kind of frame, but I'm basically adding a white mat to each of them and some shadowing because I want to see if that will be enough to have these photos pop against this paper. This paper isn't a real high contrast with the photos since there's all that snow in the photos and there's a lot of white on the paper, and I usually go for more contrast for the foundation for my photos, but I'm going for an old-fashioned-y look here. It works with the mood that I want to create. And now I'm going to drag over this floral print and see if I can crop this down just a bit and layer it behind and get this romantic, old-fashioned feel that home has for me. Now that I've got my photos on a block in an arrangement that I might or might not keep, it's time to go look for some embellishing bits for the page. I'm going to stick with the kit that I've been using, the Annabelle kit by Lynn Marie. I bought it over at thelilypad.com. So I'm going to stick with that kit and see what kind of embellishments she has to coordinate with this. Banners are very trendy and cool right now, and I'm thinking that I realized I could use one of these sideways ones for my title. It would make a really nice background for me to put my title on and have it pop. And I also like the look of these medals too. They're a lot of fun and they're romantic. They fit with the mood. I like to get a title down pretty early on my page, even if it's not the title that I stick with, because that's a good way into a story for me. Because remember, I'm still trying to figure out how to make this more than just pretty pictures. Pretty pictures are nice, but I think the page has more enduring value to your family, to you. If you try and figure out why those photos compelled you, what is the story that you could tell about this? There has to be some story you could tell. The only thing I can come up with initially for the title is Home in Winter, because I mean, this isn't my current home, this is my childhood home, but I think of it as home, and it's the winter, and it's just the mood that I'm feeling, the story that I'm feeling. So I want to use this little banner to put my title on, and I'm going to use just a big, clear, straight Bibis Noi font to say Home in Winter. Now that I see my title on the white banner, I realize that a blue banner would give me a little more pop, and blue would be a nice color to get repetitions with, to draw the eye around the page, and blue fits with the whole winter theme. So I'm going off to look for some ways to get repetitions of that blue and also of the banner shape. And I had just bought some labels. I remembered this from Lorianne, also at the Lily Pad. Every month the Lily Pad has a BYOC, Build Your Own Collab, where the designers all use similar colors. And I loved the March one. So this product by Lorianne, these labels, was in the same kit that the Annabelle kit by Lynn Marie was in. So I went over and grabbed those blue labels and dragged them over because I know I'm going to need a place to put my date. Know I'm going to need a place to put my journaling, and this I'm setting up a triangle of blues on the page, a visual triangle that will draw the eye around the page. Looking at the flower and the heart metals, I'm thinking that I'd like to get one more metal, but I'd like it to be a snowflake since this is winter and I do need to emphasize that theme. So I'm going to take a look and see what I've got in supplies, and I found this great snowflake by Anna Aspness. I'd like to jazz up my title a little bit. I usually like to break my title, so I'm going to take the word home off the banner. I'm also thinking about something that's trendy right now is to do negative cuts or die cuts from something, so I want to cut the words of the title from that blue banner, but I don't want to do all of them. I want to get In Winter larger, and I'm going to put home up here on my photo, and I also had just come across a new font that I really like. That script font is called House Grind, and I've got it pinned on my fonts board at Pinterest. So I put home up on the photo, and from the banner I'm going to cut In Winter. To do that digitally, I got In Winter to the size I wanted it, selected the area, filled that circle in the R, I wanted that cut too. So I selected that area, and I also selected the area that In Winter fills. I then hid that text layer, cut it from my banner, made sure there was a drop shadow on my banner, and I get this cool trendy effect. While I'm not aiming for a particularly high contrast layout here, I do feel like the title is not real legible with what's behind it. So I'm going to go find some paper that'll give it a little more pop to put right behind those openings. Went back to the same collection of Annabelle papers by Lynn Marie and grabbed this ledger paper, cut a piece, and slipped it up in behind there. I also trimmed down that banner. Just want the greens behind the cutouts so it shows up a little better. Now it's time to look at a few more embellishments into strengthening the flow around the page. And I'm thinking, what else could I embellish with? And it occurs to me, 1, feathers are trendy, and 2, I've got chickens. So feathers would be perfect. I keep everything organized in AC/DC, and I've got all these feathers in one category. And a quick and easy way to get all those in the category is go do a search through your folders for anything with the word feather in it, any file names, and just copy them to a category. I did that a few weeks ago, and so now all my feathers are easily accessible. So I grabbed some feathers. I grabbed the silver feather, which is nice because it echoes the metals in the heart charm, the flower, the snowflake, and then I also got this blue cardstock, which was a perfect match. That feather is by Katie Petit from Winter Peony, and the cardstock feather is by Valerie Wibbins from, I think it's Sprinkles 11. I also grabbed a brad from Anna Aspness's Art Play Sweet Baby to add another hit of metal and to anchor those feathers to the page. At this point, I'm going to start to think about one, my canvas as a whole, the whole composition, and two, journaling and final polishing. So I'm off looking for just a little way to end the canvas. And I grabbed this banner to put up in the top left, and I got some cardstock from the same kit to see if that would look good backing up my composition. Again, it's lower contrast than I'd expected, but I'm liking the effect. Some finishing touches that I'm adding are, one, I'm oomping up the shadows underneath my two blocks of pattern paper under my photos, just because things aren't very high contrast. So I basically duplicated the shadow layer and punched it up a little. I also added some stitching at the top of the yellow block of cardstock over the little banner and down over the photo. The reason for the one over the photo is I'm basically looking for, I like repetitions of 3, and that gives me a triangle of stitching. Now I need to get my journaling on the page, and in addition to getting my journaling on the page, I still have to find my story. I've spent probably an hour now with my photos and supplies, thinking about my home in winter, thinking about why it matters, and I start out by journaling that looking at these photos, I think about how much of the life here at this farm, at this home, is spent in the outdoors. And it also brings to mind how my life is really spent indoors and is not anywhere near as physical as the rest of my family's. And I start that journaling, and I had mistakenly thought I was going to put it on that little label, and there's no way it's all going to fit. So I tried it there on the label. I tried it up in the right, up in the up above my right photo, but then it makes that whole grouping so blocky, and I didn't like that, and also it didn't really fit. So now I'm thinking the space on that photo with the barbed wire leaves some space, and I kind of like that, but when I look at the canvas, that feels really heavy there, and the page feels out of balance. So now I've got to rethink things again. And my solution is to put it in 3 spots, to put it on 2 of the photos and down on that label and get a triangle of journaling. At this point, I'm going to just add some finishing touches to the page, the date, maybe a little bit of trim, see if I want any more stitching. The journaling I ended up with is, life here is lived so much in the outdoors, I appreciate visiting in all seasons, made aware of what a different life I live, so much inside and of the mind rather than outside and of the body. Grateful that each of us got to choose what suited us best, wishing Dad had had more time outside. On an especially cold and messy day, Mom fed the chickens by tossing seed out the living room window. I'm happy with what I've done here. It's not a story per se, it's more my thoughts. But the reason I'm happy is that I've gone beyond just using the pictures, that I've pushed myself to do that, is that it captures my thoughts at this time. So if my family wants to know what I was thinking, they can. If I want to know what I was feeling or thinking, I can. And it also catches concrete details, like this one winter when I was there. And it was so funny when my mom just slid open the living room window. It's the window that looks out over the bird feeders. And the chickens were out on the back lawn walking around. And she went out to the back room and got like a bucket of birdseed and opened the living window and just tossed it out the window and shut the window back up. And the way I got to that story was, 1, with the photos and the physical details in the photos, the chickens, the winter, the barn. 2, with a title that just came to me and that was my holding title, and it ended up being my real title. And 3, by spending time with my photos until I just had something I wanted to express in words to go with the photos. While I was telling you about how I got to my story and what was in my story, you might have noticed that I added a little bit of trim, some white pom-poms below that green strip. Just, it's a subtle accent, it's white, it doesn't really stand out, but I just wanted that. I like to add a little bit of detailing. And then I'm noticing while I'm making the page, I'm looking at what visual triangles I have, looking at what kind of flow I have. And I have the visual triangle of metals, I have a visual triangle of blues, I have a visual triangle of journaling spots. But there's that orange of the chickens in the picture, and I feel like I'd like a visual triangle of oranges. So I'm going to use some orange stitches to hold down that trim, the pom-pom trim, and I'm going to grab a label that's orange also and put it right up above the picture, because another thing I wanted to do is record the place, because I don't know if somebody's going to look at this in 60 years or 100 years, but it would be nice for them, since I live in New Hampshire, to know that this is not New Hampshire, this is New York State, and in fact, it's the farm where I grew up. So I'm going to add that there. I want to point out another reason that visual triangle of oranges is really important. If you look at the visual triangle of blues that I've set up, from the feather over to the title work down to that label below the photo of the house, they frame the photo of the house, but the path that they define never crosses the path of the fence post picture or the chicken picture. By putting that orange label up above the fence post picture and those orange stitches down on the trim, I've now got a visual triangle that moves from within that chicken and kitten picture to the label up above the fence posts, and then down there to the trim below the title work, and that visual triangle actually traverses the other two photos. Here's my finished page, Home in Winter. When I began, I knew only that I wanted to make a page with a photo of chickens and kittens that I found charming. To take the page beyond a pretty postcard, I focused on the concrete details in the photos as I worked, thinking about winter and this farm and the creatures and things on it. I added a title early on, not sure if it would be the title I stuck with, but knowing that having a title pushes me to come up with a story or a message to complement it. I wrote journaling, starting with a free write of my thoughts, and included specific details as well as the feelings these details triggered. You can tell meaningful stories with your scrapbook page designs. In my class, Tension, Story, Focus, and Flow, I detail 10 ways to step up your designs, including using title journaling and design to find your way.